Tell me, just so I get a sense of the audience, how many people have already seen Maggie's Plan? Raise your hand, get a sense. Okay. Well, everybody else, get tickets, see it Sunday. Check it out. With this panel, we really want to sort of look deeply at the production of the movie. We did a similar event last year with the Mike Leigh film, and this year we just really thought it would be a nice opportunity for this New York movie to have an opportunity for you to meet people from all different aspects of the production, to talk with you about how they made the movie, why they made the movie, the way that they collaborated. So we're going to talk about a number of different aspects of the production itself. And to be able to do that, we have a really terrific group seated right in front of you. So I'm going to introduce everybody now. Actually, no, you know what I'm going to do? Let me first introduce Rebecca Miller, writer-director, sitting right here to my left. Welcome, Rebecca. And actually, why don't we try it this way? Why don't we have each person introduce themselves, tell you their role on the film, and just a little bit about how they got involved, how and why they got involved in this project. Because it might be a way for us to kind of start and kind of get the ball rolling as we talk about this collaboration. It's always interesting to hear how and when and why different people got involved with a particular film. So we don't even need to go in order. Who wants to start? Birth order.
I can start. Hi, I'm Karen.
Star signs.
I'm Karen Rinaldi. I wrote the story that Rebecca adapted for Maggie's Plan. How did we get started? We got started about 4 years ago. We're friends. We were talking about what Rebecca was going to work on next, and she was looking for a story, and I said, let me tell you a story. And I told her the story about Maggie. And she said, I like that story. What is that story? I said, it's from my unpublished novel. You can have it. And we started talking about it over the next couple of years, and it developed into the extraordinary screenplay that Rebecca wrote.
I'm Damon Cardasis. I'm one of the producers, and I'm Rebecca's producing partner. And we have a production company called Round Films. So I knew about the story very early on. We were sort of looking for a variety of projects, and Rebecca mentioned that her and Karen had spoken, and it sounded like a great idea. And so very early stages.
I'm Rachael Horovitz, and hold on. I produced the film as well with Damon and Rebecca, and I got involved because I knew Rebecca and was a big fan of hers, and also a longtime friend, and wanted to work with her. And we talked about different projects, and she threw this in a bunch of, it was on a list of some things that were percolating, and it really caught my attention.
I'm Sabine Hoffmann. I'm Rebecca's editor, and this is our 4th collaboration, and I feel very blessed to be part of Maggie's Plan.
I'm Cindy Tolan, and I'm the casting director, and this is our 5th film together, and I think Rebecca made one previous, and it was a short film, and it was Florence, and I didn't cast that. So I feel like we're at a milestone at this moment with 5 films.
It's amazing. Congratulations. The film is terrific, and for those of you that haven't seen it yet, I do strongly recommend that you try to go see it on Sunday. So let me just start with Rebecca and Karen. Let's hear a little bit more about the conversation you had. You were friends, you said already. You started talking about working on this project. What were the aspects of it for each of you that made you want to collaborate on adapting this to a feature film? I understand the tone of the piece maybe changed a little bit. Tell us about some of the early conversations you had about the specific project.
Well, it's funny because memory is a funny thing, and everybody remembers things slightly differently. I remember her sending it to me without describing it, and then I read it. But anyway, I mean, like saying, I think this might be good. This strand might be good. But anyway, it doesn't matter. The point is, I did think it was a good idea. It was different in the sense that it wasn't, the approach was not comedic. That's accurate, right? It was not a comedic approach. It was more serious, and it was very much, it was tougher, and it wasn't as lyrical. But the thing that really hooked me was the central kind of switch, the kind of central idea, and the hook, because I'd never actually made a film with really a hook. And like a song, I mean, it has a hook. And in a way, the fact that it had a hook liberated me in a lot of ways. And so we started, I took it and I started breaking it down and taking everything that I could from the actual book and and then started embellishing and changing and adapting. And we would have endless coffees, talking about the transformations that were happening, what was being kept, what was not, what I was losing, how I felt, and there were substantial changes. But I mean, at the same time, it was a real, without, I really needed the mother of the mother thing, of the vinegar, or whatever you call it, to make the rest of it, the thing grow. And then it continued, the conversation continued to expanded to include everybody on this panel, because I started needing more feedback. But you talk, if you want to talk about a little bit more about it.
It's funny because we'll talk about that later. But I had put together I had pulled the Maggie and Georgette parts of the novel, it was a bigger novel, into a 70 or 80 page document that I did send to you, but it was after I sort of told you the hook of the story.
Okay.
Yeah. And my work was probably more polemical, more wanting to make a point, not as much fun. That's why it's still not published, which is fine. It's probably where it needs to stay, is in the drawer, the proverbial drawer where the novel lives sometimes. But working with Rebecca was amazing, because watching Rebecca humanize the characters. And then the main characters were mine. So it was John, well, those of you who have seen it, it would be Maggie, Georgette, John, the children were all my characters, and sort of the storyline follows that. But for those of you who have seen it, the Pickle Man, Tony and Felicia, and a lot of really wonderful, wonderful touches were all Rebecca's. So that actually didn't come from the book at all. So it was really sort of what I think Rebecca's talking about is it becomes the mother, or the sort of place where it all starts, and then it becomes something else, something that Rebecca very much has her imprint all over it. And I like Rebecca's Maggie better than I like my Maggie, which is really a very satisfying process to go through, very humbling, and really, really wonderful and grateful.
Well, I want to pick up on that. Why do you like, as a way of maybe you describing, Karen, this character, tell us why you like Rebecca's Maggie more than your Maggie, as a way of explaining who this Maggie is and how she evolved from your work to the broader film that we see.
Maggie was more sort of fierce and unforgiving, and like I said, more of a polemical character, which is not really what anybody wants to read or see. But I had written the novel really to make a point very much about women. So that I was frustrated that I thought that women weren't. I'm a publisher and an editor, so I live in this world of media and story and fiction and TV and everything else. So I thought, well, I hadn't seen women portrayed in a way that I want them to be portrayed. And so out of that frustration, I started doing sketches of women. These sketches turned into these 5 women. The 5 women turned into a novel, and then it felt very much like I was making a point. And you can't make a point with story. That's not what story's for. There's a great line that Rebecca wrote into the screenplay where Georgette is talking about, she scolds her ex-husband and says, "You didn't write a novel. You wrote," what does she say? You wrote a thesis on, Georgette has this line, and in the film, you wrote this, and I thought, oh my God, that's what I did. And in a way, I thought that was also you speaking to me and saying, you didn't write it. So there was a point of creating these women that I fell in love with and wanting them to come to life, but it needed the sort of softer touch, the more sort of the flawed character that actually brings any story to life, and that is something that Rebecca was able to do that I couldn't do on the page.
Yeah, and there was a kind of a, the question of what is the essence of the characters, which is very, very important to me, and really started, because you can't really spool out anyone's destiny before you know who they are, so like the essential self. And then comes the mechanics of writing the story, and that's where, I had a lot of conversations with Rachael, especially in terms of the final act, and questions like, well, but John has to find out. I mean, these kind of questions, I'm sorry you haven't seen the film, but writing a film like this, which is kind of a mating between a screwball comedy and a romantic comedy and a drama. I mean, it's kind of in some strange little domain of its own, but it does have its mechanics, and you have to obey them, and you have to make it work for the audience in a certain way. And and I also spoke to Sabine about it, because I knew she was going to cut it, and she was, very helpful to look at it from that point of view. And Cindy looked at it, Damon looked at it, because I'm always interested. I don't take everyone's advice by any means, but at the same time, I love to hear people's perspectives when I'm ready for them. Yeah.
So now that the process is finished, the movie's premiered, you've sold the film to distribution, let's hear about some of those perspectives from others on the panel. Tell us about some of the concrete conversations you remember having, the feedback that you remember giving, the ideas that either you gave that were accepted or not accepted, but that contributed to this broader collaboration. Whoever wants to start.
Well, I think looking at the script, I mean, the script changed many times over many years, because we had original dates that we were planning on starting, and then they got pushed for whatever reasons, and so you sort of continue on this journey. And the story changed. There was one time where there was in one of the drafts where there was a whole Guggenheim scene.
Yeah, I was just remembering that the guy actually went down the Guggenheim, down
we were trying to figure out a
skateboarded
budget.
Down the ramp of the Guggenheim.
And Rachael had a friend at the Guggenheim who we reached out to.
So wanted that to happen.
Yeah, and then, originally we were supposed to be shooting in Zurich, so, we have these fantasies, we're going to shoot in Zurich, how luxurious, and then you look at your budget and you start seeing it going lower and lower, and then you realize you're shooting 45 minutes upstate New York.
Yeah, lucky not to be in Central Park.
Originally, we were thinking it was going to be in Central Park. So I think you have to start trying to marry the creative with the reality of the financial constraints, which is always depressing, and it's a depressing conversation. And so you try to figure out a way of how best can we still pull this off, make it the way that it should be made, but also make it for the amount that we have and for within what the restraints are. So.
For me, it was a really, really interesting experience. My background, I suppose, if I had to pull from one aspect of the process, is very much in script development. I spent more than a decade working at studios as what was called a D girl in the unpolitically correct days, and that's not at all Rebecca's process. So it was really wonderful and kind of revolutionary for me to play the role of a development producer with someone who didn't need it or want it, but who was developing a script, sort of with a team, and my my experience, which is sort of what Damon was talking about, having to do though with development, is that when we started, I think I imagined I thought that hook was so commercial. Right, Rebecca? There was a moment where I was like, oh, we can get money. This can be we can get paid, and it'll. And what's fascinating is that the push and the pull of all of these things we've talked about, most importantly, the auteur vision that Rebecca, had inside her artist brain, made the film happen in exactly the way it needed to. So that means the scale of it and how much the hook drove it versus how much the characters and the realness of the characters drove it. So I think that ultimately, I mean, yes, it would have been better to have a couple million more dollars or be at the next tier of the DGA, but I think at the end of the day, Eugene, your point being, looking back, it could not have been a Rebecca Miller film in that other version where the hook was leading it as, that's the tail leading the dog.
It also felt like at a certain point, the movie was, putting together the movie was sort of, it was like, this is very Maggie-esque, like we have to let go and let the universe take over. And, there was an element of that where things ended up working out for the best. And because we had to push, I can go into more detail, but like we ended up the day that we needed a blizzard, there was a blizzard actually, and just financially
So
you're
amazing.
thinking,
That's amazing.
one of the things not to go into specifics of a bond company, but they look over your budget and they're like, what's going to happen if there's no snow? Can you afford the special effects? And you're like, yeah, sure, don't worry, like we have backup plans for that, and you're just trying to get everyone to just say like, shut up, yes, can we start filming already? But there happened to be a blizzard, so it all sort of miraculously fit together, I think, when it needed to.
From my perspective, it's incredibly lucky to be working with Rebecca because we start very early reading early drafts, but I always try to say fix it in prep to directors or producers, and that never happens. But with Rebecca, because she's such an amazing writer and really pushes the material already in the writing stage to being incredibly precise and tight, that does happen. So we always have started with an incredibly tight and beautiful script. And then I was also lucky to be part of, at least a little bit, with her discussions with the director of photography, Sam Levy, where they very intensely thought about the color scope of the film, certain visual elements, and I got to be a part of that a little bit. And that helped me get very deeply immersed in Rebecca's vision and really understand her vision for this particular film, as well as with our previous projects, where we really talk about the characters a lot. And because so much comes out of the truth of the characters. And that may lead to Cindy and how you cast and find your characters.
I get a script from Rebecca, and I'm like, well, how are we going to cast this? What are the nuts and bolts? Artistically, I know we can do it, right? But what's the budget that we're starting at? And who are the players, and what are the roles? And at what level can we get them? And this is a financial conversation. This isn't even the art of who you want. So, a lot of you haven't seen the film, but what I will say is that there are three principal characters. There's Maggie, there's Georgette, and then there's John. And it's called Maggie's Plan, okay? But then you have a $10 million film. How can you cast this for that amount of money in the financial scheme in Hollywood? How can you do that? This is a business. What are we going to do? So who's going to be Georgette? Julianne Moore. Fantastic. Our currency has just gone up. Who is going to play Maggie? Greta Gerwig. Awesome. Okay, now we're in the triangle. Who's going to be John? Seriously, who is going to be a leading male actor in Hollywood opposite these awesome women, but be looked at as a supporting man, a supporting role? And that, you start breaking that stuff down, and then the budget goes down. And then it goes down. And then it goes down. And then what's amazing about Rebecca is that she rewrites it each time for the budget of the film. And everybody's talking about hook. The hook that we always have with Rebecca Miller is Rebecca Miller, okay? Period. It's like when we started out with Personal Velocity, no one knew who Rebecca Miller was. Nobody knew who she was as a filmmaker, right? All I knew was that I had the hook with Rebecca Miller, and if I could get any actor in the room to talk to her, she would reel them in, and then we would be able to take off. That's no longer the hook now, right? Because it's been proven. It's a proven commodity. So now it's like, financially, how can Rebecca Miller make her films with the cast that she needs to make so that more people see them? And that's always now my approach to casting a Rebecca Miller film. What I will also say is that everyone keeps saying that this is a departure for Rebecca Miller. I keep hearing that over and over and over again, that this is a romantic comedy, that this is a screwball comedy. I ask you all to go back and look at all 4 of her films. Every single thing people are talking about are in there. They may be small nuances, but every single thing, there is comedy in all of them. That's what I'd say.
These are such great insights, and I love that we especially have the ability to look at these relationships, your creative relationships over time, because I think it's really informative for an audience to hear about a collaboration that becomes so nuanced because of that time.
Yeah. No, it's an amazing thing. I mean, those of you who are filmmakers, or that those relationships become so incredibly important, and you don't make films alone, and so your connection to the people and your relationship with the people, the continuity when it's appropriate, is incredibly important.
I have more questions, but I want to give the audience a chance. We're at the half-hour mark already, which went very quickly. So we have microphones on either side. There they are. So if you have a question, raise your hand. We're going to get the microphone to you so that people listening to this podcast at home or watching the video on YouTube in the future will have a chance to hear your question. So let's go ahead and raise a hand. The first people that ask questions are always a little shy. Don't be shy. It's a warm group. They're not going to, yeah. So we'll start on the side, the third row right there.
Hi. I was absolutely crazy about Personal Velocity. And when I
thank
saw
you.
it, my eyes went, oh my God, I never saw anything. It was this independent film. You were at the beginning of the era of truly unique women characters. So I thank you and you for casting whom you did. And I just wanted to know, do you ever consider a story that's not from a friend or that's from an outside screenwriter for your projects in Round Company? You said Round Company, I believe?
I have read many films from outside, and they never have yet been quite right when I have nothing to do with them from the beginning, because it's almost like the train has left the station. I can't get under the hood. I don't know. You know, there's an element of being a mechanic finally when you're a screenwriter, and I don't know how to drive the car, anymore. I don't know how to start, and I need something to get really under my skin. So the answer is, I always think it could happen. What I have become more and more open to is adapting people's books. That I find very interesting, because then you have a lot done for you, but you still have a lot of openness, and you can rearrange everything, you can restructure everything, but you've got something to start with, So I like that. I find the hardest thing actually just starting with a screenplay and nothing. I mean, I've done that twice, and that's difficult. I always write fiction myself, actually, and then adapt that. So I've done that too. So I'm open.
My follow-up to that is to ask Damon to weigh in as well, because you have this partnership, this company. Tell us about the kinds of projects that you're looking for. Tell us about your interest.
I think it's sort of a variety of things. The company is slowly growing at an organic pace, so it's some ideas Rebecca and I have spoken about. I write as well, which Rebecca's helped nurture, and so we're going to be producing some of those. There's a book that we've optioned that is being written into a screenplay by the author right now. And then there's other ideas that we've talked about, writing or other. We're sort of writer-focused. It all sort of has to start with a script, which would, I guess, be such an obvious answer, but everyone says that, and I don't think that's always the case. So I think it comes down to good writing, but all sort of genres, I think you'd be we have something we want to write together that would blow everyone's mind, so, which you won't find out about tonight, but it's like a total 180. So it can be everything from big, small, art house, experimental, I don't know, anything that's fun and well written.
In this case, you were
And
able
a
to...
documentary, actually.
Wow. In this case, you have sold the film to Sony Classics. Before we take our next question, tell us about how, when you finished a film, you premiere it at festivals, you go to Toronto, you come to New York, you show it to buyers. How do you make that decision? How do you make that decision on who's the right home for your film?
Well, Rachel, would you like to take that question?
Avec plaisir. We are funded independently, so we had a committee of people who made the decision. It was not any one of us, although at the end of the day it was one of us. The person who put the most money in had the largest vote, and we were all thrilled. I mean, we all feel that we've kind of grown up on Sony Classics movies. There are a lot of movies that company has released here that no one else would have taken a risk with. And although I don't feel that we are necessarily in that category, it's really an honor to be, in the library with and the family of. But it's not fun to, it's not fun to go to festivals.
Going to a festival
unsold.
without a distributor is intensely nerve-wracking experience. But, you're lucky if you have a few people who want it. That's an amazing thing to have happen. So
Nerve-wracking because you might come home without it?
Well, you don't know. You don't know if you'll have a distributor wanting your film, and then if you do, you don't know if they'll give enough money that then your financiers can get their money back, and you don't know if you're going to get a distributor who's going to really take care of your film, and it's
You feel
fairly
everybody
nerve-wracking.
on top just like staring what's going to happen on
Yeah.
this one night. I mean,
It's very insecure.
say
moment.
you should say the joke that you happened.
Well, it's
That's-
sort of like getting dressed up in a bridal outfit and going to the city hall and hoping someone will propose.
Oh my God.
The flip side of that, though, is that we did get to make the movie that we wanted to make, and
Yeah.
there was nobody overseeing that, which was,
Right. And
yeah,
I
all the
delicious.
financiers were awesome and very supportive and very behind us, and just we've had a great collaboration with all of them. So
Right, and I've always had artistic control of my films, and in a way, and been protected by my producers in a way too. So that and it's harder to have that once you have the kind of a studio behind you.
Final cut is really important, I think, for a director to have in this situation. Yeah.
Which
Not
is
said by an
really
editor.
rare.
Okay. Let's go up to there. Yes, hi.
Yeah, hi. I apologize in advance if you find this question annoying. You probably have heard it before. But
Curious.
I wonder if you think self-consciously about how much of your father you carry around with you as an artist.
I don't think about it. I don't think that many people think about that. I don't think about that so much. But I'm aware that he loved to put it over, as he used to say. He loved to make people laugh. He loved to feel like he made something really well made. He constructed something that was well made, like a table or a chair. And I have that feeling too. I don't want to leave a script until I feel like all the screws are tight, that everything is like really made. And that then I feel like, okay, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But I haven't just left it all flimsy. And I'm always amazed by, that isn't always the attitude towards scripts. Scripts are often thought of as just a springboard for this miraculous thing that's going to happen on set. And I that's not my attitude. I don't like that attitude. But I think yeah, so like in that sense, and I think in some ways maybe some of his humor, but I don't know. I guess I don't think about it that much, but certainly it's there to be explored.
Is that lesson something that he instructed or something that you observed?
No, more observed and sort of
Yeah.
absorbed, yeah.
Absorbed, yeah. Let's see what other questions people have. So right here in the third row. Hi.
Hi. You all alluded to the fact that the script went through a lot of changes and developments, and I was wondering, when you got to the editing, did it then still go through a lot of transformation?
Well, I mean, Sabine, you should say something about this. It was unusual for us You go talk about it a little
Yeah,
bit.
I mean, we had a pretty tight schedule, and as we said, there was a beautiful script to start with, but it was also a long script. So our very first assembly was 2:15, I think, 2 hours and 15, which is unusual for us. We usually have our first assembly around 2 hours maximum, sometimes even underneath. And in our process, we ended up cutting, I think, 40 minutes of material.
But really just dialogue. What's interesting is it wasn't like other films, like Personal Velocity or Pippa, we restructured the films. This film wasn't restructured. And we only lost one scene that was about, a minute long. It was all little bits of dialogue that got cut out. And it was like we were... Go ahead.
Yeah, the process is fascinating because you realize, Rebecca always says that, it's different on the page than it is when you see it. And the truth of a performance can do so much more than any written dialogue can do. And we really experimented. I mean, I think what is so wonderful with Rebecca is also she's completely fearless and she will push any kind of possibility. And we really tried different things, and I want to always make the cutting room a playground to explore ideas, and nobody has to be afraid to try things. We can always put it back if it doesn't work, or but we were pretty daring.
Okay, let's see what other questions we have. Can we do the front row up here in the corner, right in the front? Just a moment, wait for the mic. Coming right now.
I was just wondering if you rehearse a lot with your actors. Do you have time for that? Or
I rehearsed with all the actors in a kind of way where we read through the scenes and we made sure that the dialogue worked and changed things that didn't work. But I don't love to rehearse and rehearse and rehearse in a kind of play-like way because I feel that it kills the freshness of doing things for the first time. So in the past, I've actually written other scenes for people that are emotionally parallel to the scene that they have to do so that they don't exhaust the scene, but they're still doing essentially the same scene emotionally. I didn't do that with this one, but we did discuss things and we talked around it a little bit and we did read through all the scenes. But yeah, so it was a few hours with each person, but not days.
All the way in the back. Hi.
Do you have any advice for casting if you're not Rebecca Miller and you don't have the funds to hire a casting director? I'm producing my friend's first feature. It's a really great script, and we've been advised that if you have or can find at least one name actor, then that will help you get more money.
It's so hard. I mean, what you're asking is so difficult in terms of attaching the actor for financing, because for me that's a chicken and egg question, because it's a casting director's job, but it's also the help of a producer, and that's also what a producer does. And with Damon and Rachael, it's extraordinary because, Ethan Hawke is in this because, Rachael was like, I just saw Ethan Hawke on the street and we were talking and he's not doing anything right now. We had thought about him.
They did know each other before that. She didn't just go up to her.
So that's the example, that's one of many
Texas.
examples of a producer, helping you cast your film or producing your film. And I think the approach is very hard if it's I'm sure it's $1 million, under $1 million. And I think that you can hire a casting director to work with you and consult it's a consulting period, and you can hire somebody for a certain amount of money to help you attach to get that person and build a deal in place to then have that person then cast your film once it's fully financed. And what I would say about it is that there are so many of us that are really good. Some people are busy and other people aren't. And everybody just wants to work on a good film. So if it's good, just send it to a casting director and ask them if they will work on it.
But I also think, if I may, just that there's sometimes something to be said to going with a younger casting director, somebody who's your own generation, because like Cindy and I really came up together. It was my first feature film was Cindy's first feature casting job, and I mean that actually didn't have big stars in it, but and was financed in an unusual way, but still there's something to be said for that, because then they're hungry. You guys come up together. It's not like anyone's doing you a favor. So if they're talented, it's good to just keep your eye out for the really talented ones around
and
you.
to add on to that, it's that all of us, like me, and everybody else, we all have associates who are casting directors or who want to be casting directors. So I have an associate in my office who actually works on very small films, and sometimes we work on them together. And that's, again, the way of meeting a person of your same age and doing it. But we all have associates. Like, if there's a style of casting that you love, because there are styles, if there's somebody that speaks to you in terms of a casting director and you want to go after that style, go after their associate.
Good tips. We're just about out of time, but if we could maybe take one more question up here in the front row. No pressure, you get the last question.
Hi, I got kind of curious to understand what you said when you finished the story, you were making a point. And I'm a screenwriter, and every time that I write something, I believe that all that I want is to make a point. And I see my characters, and I think that they are doing that for me. So when you said that you were making a point, and that was kind of the reason that it wasn't published yet, what do you mean with making a point, and why do you think that people don't want to hear about it or something like that?
Because I think that story and character have to drive the idea, and that the idea can't come first in fiction and in storytelling. If you're writing a nonfiction narrative, investigative journalism, or you've got some science-based thing, it's very, very different. But when it comes to storytelling, it's driven by character and action and interaction and the emotional investment. The point gets made by all of that. If you start with your point, which is how I started naively in some crazy way, really 15 years ago when I started this. I was younger, and I learned over that time that, oh, right. But the fact of the matter is, the characters came full circle and became full characters, but I still started with the point. And you don't want to do that, because that actually sets you off on a wrong path, and then it becomes very difficult to unwind it. And what happened is that when Rebecca said that what she liked was the hook, it was like what was true in the story that I wrote originally was the emotional journey that the characters go on, and what their intention was, and their, how they lived in the world, and their names and the hook point. But what Rebecca was able to do is then take those people and make the point, which we don't even, if we ask what the point of the movie is, and that would be a conversation entirely, and I'm not sure that we would really know what the point is, because that's besides the point.
Terrific final word. I'm going to ask the audience to stay seated for a moment so that our guests can get out the door. But before we do that, because it's just a big group, let's thank them and give them a warm round of applause for their time today.
Thank you.
Thank you.